In this video, I'll teach you this one behavior a lot of men think is an attractive behavior with women you're seeing, you're dating, you've been with for like a couple of years or months, right? But it's actually a destructive behavior that makes you look insecure and keeps pushing women away. I'm an ex-nice guy myself, and I was guilty of doing this behavior myself unconsciously, right? So I'll teach you my exact process of how I personally replaced this destructive behavior with an attractive one and how I was then able to build amazing relationships with women. So behavior I'm talking about is empathy, but there's a constructive and a destructive level to this. So I'm not here to yap about like alpha, be alpha, right? Like never compromise, but like actually a more balanced level of empathy. The fascinating observation I make with my clients in every group call is that they have a constructive level of empathy at work, yeah, but a destructive level of empathy with women they love. Now, I'll define in just a second what empathy actually means, right, and also what the difference looks like, yeah, so don't worry about that. But first, I need you to understand why destructive empathy is so toxic and so unattractive, bro. So basically, empathy is like a compass for so many other behaviors in a relationship, which fundamentally impacts how she respects you, how she desires you, and how much she looks up to you. So if you have a malfunctioning compass, you'll take the wrong path and end up somewhere where you don't want to end up at, right? So let's take a look at two different expressions of empathy, right? The Hercules way and the Kevin way. So Hercules stands for the constructive one, Kevin stands for the destructive one. So one of my clients, he's an investment banker, right? And he works on like $1 billion deals every year. So for example, when one of his associates was 5 minutes late to work for the first time, right? And like while my client was pissed about it, he tried to understand her. Turned out she had experienced a death in the family. She overslept. Happens, no big deal. He showed empathy and said like, just make sure it doesn't happen again, right? Firmly, assertively, but also with empathy. However, over the coming weeks, she kept coming late. She messed up slide decks, wrong font, typos, and all this shit, right? My client then told her to get her fucking shit together or she's going to be fired because she's putting the reputation of the team and the firm at risk. And my client's responsibility is to protect the integrity of the firm, and that's why he set a firm boundary. This is obviously a great example of empathy with boundaries, aka Hercules empathy, because he's protecting the integrity and respect of the fucking team, and he sets a clear boundary. Now here's the fucking interesting thing, man. The same client who's perfectly capable of displaying Hercules empathy at work does something completely outrageous with women he loves. Yeah, I'm telling you, bro, I'm not making this up. Let me give this fucking wild example. He flew from London to New York like a couple of weeks ago just for 1 week to help his girlfriend finalize the purchase of a flat. So he took time out of his fucking busy schedule to help her, right? How did she respond? She's coming 30 minutes late to dates. She's leaving him on red. She's telling him he's a complete idiot because he messed up a plan or a booking of a restaurant, and she's projecting all her stress onto him. Now, guess what this guy does? When she's late, he says, no problem, I know you're busy. When she leaves him on red, he messages her if everything's all right, if he can help her, if she's happy. I mean, bro, that is a shocking display of Kevin empathy without boundaries. He's a total doormat. It's not even about his like poor text game or whatnot, right? It's more about his inability to fucking set a boundary. Like his empathy knows zero limits, which will communicate to her, I lack any self-respect, so please push me around. Treat me like a fucking doormat. And before you blame women for pushing you around, let me stop you right there, bro, because you're not in kindergarten anymore. You are an adult. That means it's not a woman's or someone else's responsibility to determine your fucking boundaries. That's your fucking job, man. Welcome to the real world. Now let me show you the exact process now, how to develop empathy with boundaries around women you actually love. So first, you got to ask yourself, why am I not setting boundaries with women? Is this a skill issue or is this an environmental issue? Because if it's a skill issue, the solution is simply to train the skill. If it's an environmental issue or contextual issue, then something else is going on. How do we figure out what the root cause is? Let's take a look at my client, Greg, all right? He sets boundaries at work. He's done this with his associates, for example, but with his girlfriend, he suddenly can't. What does this tell you? The skill exists. So what changed? The only thing that changed is the context. We went from a non-romantic environment, aka work, to a romantic environment. That means for Greg, context actually determines his behavior and thus the quality of expression of the skill. So when behavior changes due to the context or environment, it's usually for one of two reasons. Either there's a real physical external threat that shuts down the skill, or there's a perceived threat that does the same fucking thing. So let's ask the obvious question. Is setting a boundary in a romantic relationship suddenly unsafe or like illegal? I mean, obviously not, bro. Duh. Which means this is only partially an environmental problem. Specifically, Greg's interpretation of the context is, since the context changed from non-romantic, aka the associate work, to romantic context, girlfriend, it seems that this also changes his interpretation of the rightness of his behavior. Aka setting a boundary which is actually constructive at work is suddenly dangerous and destructive in a romantic relationship. Now we found the fucking root cause of the problem. It is a perception problem. So if the skill is already there, the ability to display empathy with boundaries is present at work, we just need to remove whatever fucking trigger that Greg has, which makes him suppress his boundaries. How do we do that? So fundamentally, perception means that the interpretation of the environment he is in has changed to a destructive or in a sort of counterproductive way. Fundamentally, he's viewing the environment through the wrong, I call them glasses. I call these glasses the Kevin glasses. Question obviously is, how do you stop viewing the environment through the Kevin glasses and bring back the Hercules glasses? You remove the Kevin glasses by understanding not what has changed, but why the change of environment causes you to have such a significant impact on the expression of the skills, aka setting boundaries. Which means you gotta ask yourself, so what is the difference between, let's say with Greg, the associate, aka work, versus the woman he loves, right? Remember the associate being the person that he was about to fire because she was disrespecting his boundaries. So he's detached from losing the associate, but he is attached to the woman he loves. And the moment there is an attachment or the attachment forms, a fear of loss gets triggered inside of you, right? Or in this case, inside of Greg. Now this attachment starts overriding his own boundaries, which then leads to empathy without boundaries, which then leads to avoiding conflict, avoiding saying no, telling her to put her phone down when talking to him, for example, to not see other guys, etc., etc. He all like throws those things out of the window because he is scared of her leaving him, which basically means her well-being is more important than his own well-being, which is obviously, believe it or not, unhealthy, fucking toxic. And the funny thing here, bro, is the very thing that he's trying to prevent, aka her leaving him through not setting boundaries, is the very thing that actually would push her away, because a woman cannot be attracted to a man who has zero fucking sense of self. Greg is deleting who he is in hopes for her to not abandon him. When I say this out loud, do you hear how fucked up this actually sounds? Like, and I'm not shaming or blaming him, right? I'm just pointing out how toxic that is. Now that we understand what's actually happening here, that the real issue is the fear of loss or the fear of abandonment, right? And that this fear of loss fundamentally anchors his actions to her potential reaction. We need to fucking remove that fear of loss, right? Because if Greg, or you in this case, do not fucking change this, she'll leave you. Because a woman cannot trust a man who cannot stay grounded around her. And if a woman cannot trust you, she's going to leave you. Because trust is the foundation of a healthy relationship. So how do we remove Greg's fear? It starts with building awareness of why does the possibility of losing her changes who you become, or who Greg becomes in this case. So for Greg and also a lot of my clients, they believe that if they lose a woman they love, they won't be okay. Because it's not about really the loss of that human being, but the loss of someone who we value and the pain that we experience once that loss occurs. That's why when you aren't attracted to a woman, you don't give a fuck if she leaves. But the more emotionally invested you are in a woman, the greater the fear of losing her. And because you want to avoid that pain, you change yourself. Another reason why you change yourself is because you operate under a false belief. You believe that setting a boundary will cause a negative reaction, and that a negative reaction will cause her to leave. Another reason why your empathy loses its boundaries. What you gotta understand about women is they do not leave a man when he sets a boundary. They leave when a man stops setting boundaries and loses and abandons himself for her sake. Because again, loss of trust, meaning loss of safety, meaning I better get the fuck out of here. So what you need to do is to simply rewire the belief around the impact of empathy with boundaries on your relationship and the potential consequence of losing her. Let me show you how I do this from one of my coaching calls. But what makes me feel safe is not the outcome itself, but my reaction to the outcome. I get rejected, I'm still alive. I don't get rejected, I'm still alive. And I have a potential vagina in my life. Great. You only have upside. I'm sure you've been with a lot of attractive women who you were yourself around with after you've gotten to know them. Nothing about that person actually changed. It's just your interpretation of that person. So what I'm basically saying is that this is the permission and belief you need to give yourself. Like making yourself believe that the pain of losing someone doesn't equal a threat to your safety. And that setting a boundary is actually attractive and not a destructive behavior. And once you embody that belief, the fear of abandonment simply evaporates. The skill comes back automatically because you're not afraid to display that skill anymore. By the way, if you like what you're hearing here and you found this super helpful, you'll definitely find my deeper insights that I share in my email or my book too super helpful too. So just click the description below and you can find out more. Now, there's one more thing I haven't told you yet, which is extremely important for the longevity of your relationship. And that is on top of displaying empathy with boundaries. You must stop acting like a boring fucking Kevin and embody a charismatic Hercules. What is charisma? Charisma is the art of making women feel safe enough to relax and also alive enough to desire you. And a lot of guys fucking suck at making women feel alive. So safety comes from empathy with boundaries, right? And leadership. Aliveness comes from playfulness and sexual tension. And this is where a lot of men fuck it up. They do therapy, they become super self-aware, and suddenly every interaction with women turns heavy. It turns into fucking counseling session. How was your day? How are you feeling? Is there anything I can help you with? Are you okay, babe? Yup. Who enjoys going to a fucking therapy session, bro? No one. Like, I'm not saying that these emotional check-ins, as I call them, aren't aren't great. They are. But when they only become the only mode of the interaction, they drain sexual tension. They remove any attraction. So you got to balance it, because otherwise you turn the relationship into a constant counseling session. So we need to change that. And there are two ways of changing this. You got to be funny and witty offline and online as well. So offline stands for being witty in person. For example, playful commentary on ordinary things. For example, like Sandra, like my girlfriend, when she drops stuff, you know, because she's a clumsy princess, I say things like, oh, Sandra, are you going for the fucking world record of clumsiness again tonight? Or something else, and like when she drops something or spills something, this is a bit of a British thing. I lived in London for 8 years. That's why I picked up on it. So when she drops something, I was like, way, you know, I applaud her. Because when in the UK, when someone drops something and you hear like the sound of it dropping, like in the pub, for example, the entire pub like cheers, you know, Schadenfreude as they call it in Britain. So this is how you create like this banter environment in person in a relationship. Online, however, is a bit different, and especially like logical, highly analytical guys struggle with this because our text conversations are mostly geared to communicate facts, which is fucking boring. So a lot of guys, what I help them with is improve their text game so that their text game actually, or basically the online communication becomes attractive, turns from a destructive text into a constructive text, so to say, that is attractive and creates emotional spikes in women, which makes them like more drawn to you. They desire you more. Here's an example of one of my coaching calls where I teach my clients how to become funny and witty over text, either in the context of dating, early stage dating, or in relationship. Next one. So what's fucking going on here? Hi, it was nice meeting you last night. Sunday is going well. I did blah, 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 blah. I have to be honest and tell you that I did a search with your name on Facebook and saw your profile. Hope you don't mind that. It seems like you're about 7 years younger than me, which is a big age gap for me if the intention is dating. Just had to be upfront and transparent because I hate wasting people's time or play games. Now the response is, you'll find I'm a very unusual 34-year-old. Don't want to throw anyone under the bus here, but why is this response a bad response?
It's too serious, I would say.
Because he's trying to qualify, right?
Because for me, the qualification of himself is way too hard. Like, it makes you look so needy. It's like, oh no, look at me, I'm special, I'm different. She wants to feel that. She doesn't want to fucking hear it. Don't tell, show. How do you show that you're different? What we can read between the lines here is she's adding a lot of context to her message. It's also a very long message. So she's not trying to disqualify him. She's actually cautious. She's concerned. And I'm sure she's also somewhat insecure about her own age. We want to reassure her that the age gap isn't an issue. When you're saying, oh, who said we're dating, you're pushing her away. What's the thing? You learn sailing on the old ships or something, right? That's the saying, isn't it? You acknowledge her, but you're also not making it a big deal, because that's what she fundamentally needs right now, right? She doesn't want it, like, she's making it heavy, but it doesn't have to be heavy. Saying, sorry if I made you nervous, but don't worry. I like women with experience or something. That's why we're saying I like women with experience instead of outright saying you're old. I like women that are old and are mature, you know? I like women with experience. It implies that she's old, but like we can also construe it in like, you've been around the block or whatnot, whether or not that is Good for us is a different question, right? Aren't you a little FBI agent? I cannot stress enough the importance of learning how to flirt over text, because a lot of interactions in your relationship or long term are going to happen digitally. And most guys fuck this up. They kill attraction by sending boring, emotionally flat messages like, hey, good morning. How did you sleep, babe? How are you today, babe? And how is your day? And most of the conversations then end up being about the chores, right? Instead, you want to use these situations, these mundane texts, actually to create emotional spikes. Why? Because emotional spikes are oxygen for attraction. For example, instead of asking my girlfriend how she's feeling in the morning, like, oh, how have you slept? I might text her, hey, how's my favorite stalker today? That's flirting. Flirting is saying the thing without saying the thing, basically. Like, I'm checking in on her, but I'm also implying desire. And this message does fundamentally two things. First, it flips the frame, and puts her in the position of wanting me. Second, the word favorite implies pre-selection, right? It subtly communicates, I'm desired, but I chose you. And stalker fundamentally communicates like, oh, she can't stop thinking of me, right? Again, it's playful. For example, when Sandra sends me a message like, hey, how did you sleep, Hercules? What is the subcommunication of this text? How did you sleep? That's an emotional check-in from her, which means she thinks of me. With those two data points, I can assume, oh, she's attracted to me because she thinks of me. Meaning I have mental real estate in her life. So what can I assume? She's attracted to me, otherwise she wouldn't check in. Now, instead of just responding with like, oh yeah, I slept well, how about you? Which is fucking boring, and there's like a friendly conversation, I can make it man to woman again. And this is what a lot of guys actually never learn, because they just somewhat stumble into the relationship, or they just settle for what was there, or because they had butterflies. But butterflies, aka love, they experience this is not equal to attraction. Love and attraction are two different things. It's different chemicals that are being released. Love is I feel safe and connected to you, but attraction is I feel sexual tension towards you. I desire you. I want to rip your pants off. Sexual attraction is not built by saying, how did you sleep? How was your day? That makes someone feel safe and connected. So when Sandra sends me, how did you sleep? I would respond with implying or explicitly stating that she cannot stop thinking of me, because otherwise she wouldn't have messaged me. Now, a lot of guys would say, oh, this is cringe, this is game, this is manipulation. It's not, bro. It's manipulation in your point of view, or it is a cringe in your point of view because you've never fucking done it before. And you're just scared of acquiring a skill that you don't know yet. So you try to devalue it because you're projecting your own insecurity onto men who actually have this skill. I'm not shaming you, I'm not judging you, I was the same. Back in the days, I thought like game is just for losers, but game is not like for losers. The most successful men, long-term relationships, or even in dating, have developed a crazy level of charisma. And charisma is a result of good game. And game is fundamentally just the art of giving women what they need. Women are drawn to men who can make them feel something through words only, because it's an art. It's a skill that you have to acquire. It displays masculine competence. And a lot of nice guys are so afraid to do this because they are so afraid to potentially say the wrong thing. But saying the wrong thing is better than not saying anything. And if you want to go deeper into how to build charisma without turning into a clown, right, or losing your masculine frame, I'd recommend watching this video next.